Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Amplify Your Business. On today's show, we're going to be talking about something that is all over the news and has been so for a few years now, actually. It is Bitcoin. And today's guest is Adam O'Brien from Bitcoin Well. Welcome to the show, Adam.
Thanks so much, man. It's great to be here.
So tell me a little bit about Bitcoin Well. When did this business start and what is it all about? What do you do?
Yeah. So Bitcoin Well, previously Bitcoin Solutions, started in 2013, and it started like all great things, just with me and a bit of a passion. I found Bitcoin, wanted to buy some Bitcoin, couldn't really find a way to buy that Bitcoin, and there must be a better way kicked in, and so kind of kickstarted buying and selling Bitcoin just online locally here in Edmonton. I had an ad on Kijiji, an ad on Facebook, and off we went. Shortly thereafter, we deployed Alberta's first and then Saskatchewan's first Bitcoin ATM in 2014. And then fast forward to today, we've got over 115 Bitcoin ATMs scattered around Canada. And, we've kind of turned into an organization that is one of Canada's leaders in the ability to buy and sell Bitcoin in a non-custodial fashion.
And talk about timing. I mean, Bitcoin is just exploded. So at the time in which you started in 2013, how much did you have to pay to get a Bitcoin at that point?
It was $100. That's $100. And today,
and now what is it now?
70,000 Canadian dollars for one Bitcoin. So yeah, I mean, the timing really couldn't have been better. I think that lucky for me, I kind of had thick enough skin to get called crazy enough times that it gave me a bit of it's funny, when I started the business in 2013, I talked to like 10 different people that I respect, business owners, mentors of mine. I was managing a restaurant at the time, and so spoke to, I had access to a lot of smart people, and all 10 of them said not to do this, because it was so new and so there was no blueprint for this business, and so lots of trial and error on the journey, and it's been a lot of fun.
Okay, so I'd like to dig into that just a little bit as well, because you have 10 experts, people who are not experts, but smart people, who you admire, look up to. They're saying don't do it. So why does Adam then say, screw that, I'm going to do this? Or what made you keep persevering through that?
My parents and my teachers would probably tell you that that was the only way to get me to do something, was to tell me not to do it. I'm a fairly contrarian, I suppose, in my day-to-day and my personality. But I think that ultimately, I saw a lot of potential in Bitcoin because of the frustrations or my limited knowledge of economics and my limited knowledge of the monetary policy in Canada. I didn't see it as necessarily good, and I didn't see it as a sustainable, kind of policy. And so Bitcoin offered alternatives to that. I saw a lot of things that make you go, in the white paper, the fact that it was released, like Bitcoin's white paper was released just a few months after the '08 economic collapse. And you had this founder of Bitcoin, who is still anonymous today, giving us these tools to create a financial system that is not going to be reliant on the organizations and the groups of people that were able to cause and disrupt the financial system, like we saw in '08. And so I just fell in love with that concept, and I started investigating what Bitcoin's policies were and how the code was written, and kind of just fell down the rabbit hole. I was orange pilled, as they now call it, and then, like everything, bought one and then sold it a little bit later and made some money, and I was like, wow, this is really cool. And then I'll never forget my first sizable transaction. I was driving home, and my mom, who's an accountant by trade, and she was kind of helping me with the books, and I was like 20 years old, and so I had like a lot of I wasn't doing things properly, and I was like, this is the real thing. Like, I'm super confident in where this can go and how this can be. And I'll never forget that phone call. Just kind of it's a really interesting moment in time, just a few months after starting the business, and kind of having that clarity. And last year we closed the year with over $50 million in sales, and we're all of a sudden kind of just able to continue to grow and to be able to really catapult into the industry, which has been fun.
Yeah, that's a fantastic story. And I love it. Just the entrepreneurial spirit to just stick with it, even though people are saying don't do it. And this is one of the things that I think is really common with a lot of businesses. The early days, there's a lot of naysayers. There's a lot of
Yeah.
people kind of discouraging that, especially when it is outside of the norm, right? And so Bitcoin was definitely outside of the norm and hard to wrap your head around. I still have a hard time wrapping my head around it, but in the early days, even that much more so, where it's like, what? How does this work? And is this secure really? And like, and then you hear people losing thumb drives with the passcodes or the Bitcoin on it, right? And as well, it's just like, I don't know. So there's some of those things that are just kind of scary and makes people just a little nervous about new technology, new innovations, new business
Yeah,
opportunities.
absolutely. It's one of those things that the technology behind it is there for a reason. And I think it's really interesting to see what people get kind of hung up on, because when you compare what the hangups are compared to other things that we're super used to in life, all of a sudden they don't become as important. For example, the fact that the founder of Bitcoin, the guy group of people or woman that created Bitcoin is anonymous. And people are like, well, that's not good. It's like, well, who invented the internet? And like 99 out of 100 people have no idea. But like, here we are using the internet every single day, and we trust the internet, and we believe that the internet is good, and it's a way for our future. And so there's been a lot of things that people have challenged me on over time. And when you just step back and just kind of broaden your horizons and think, well, how does this compare to real life? How does this compare to other things in my life? All of a sudden, it's not so scary. So yeah, it's been an interesting kind of shift of perception for me. And then of course, as you dive into the business and as you kind of learn more about the industry and more about how corporate or traditional business maybe reacts to the industry, it kind of just has a bit of a snowball effect into the brain.
So now, when you said that you this last year have surpassed the 50 million, right? Is that what you said
That's
in
right.
sales?
Yeah.
So what is a sale then? Is that a transaction where somebody has purchased Bitcoin through one of the ATMs? Is that how that works? Or
That's right. So we are an inventory model. We're a non-custodial model, and that's been very important from day one. We've been non-custodial. What that means is at no point in time do we hold custody of the customer funds. This is different from like an online exchange. We've seen online exchanges, custodian online exchanges, fail time and time again, and they ultimately become a honeypot. And a honeypot is something that is one group of organizations that publicly hold a lot of money or a lot of Bitcoin, is an easy target for hackers. So for example, we've all heard of Mt. Gox. In 2013, they started as a Japanese trading card exchange and then transitioned to be a Japanese Bitcoin exchange. And they were the world's first Bitcoin exchange. And ultimately, whether the organization itself was hacked or was done from inside remains to be unseen. But if you had funds in Mt. Gox, you do not have those funds today.
yeah.
And that's because they were a custodian. And so what we've done is we have a platform both online and at our ATMs where we have inventory. We hold Bitcoin ourselves. And then when the user goes to purchase, they put $100 in the machine. We mark up that Bitcoin and then send them the respective amount of Bitcoin. And that allows users to get their funds immediately. 8 seconds or less is our time frame at the machine. Which is the safest and fastest way to buy Bitcoin. And so that's been, kind of our differentiator from day one. We've been very, very, very anti-custodial, non-custodial since inception.
Okay. So just walk me through that, because I've never used one of your machines. And so am I putting a thumb drive into the machine and along with my bank card, or like, how does this transaction occur?
So you'd have your own wallet, you'd have a public address.
Okay.
And so already right there is a bit of a barrier, and one that we're continually solving today, but you have to do the work up front. And we're very, very adamant about making sure that all of our customers are capable and able to hold the Bitcoin. So you have to have a Bitcoin wallet. That Bitcoin wallet has a public address inside. Think of it like an email address, but it's a alphanumeric string of numbers and letters, and with attached to a QR code. You scan that QR code at the machine, insert cash, and then the machine talks to the server holding the Bitcoin. The server then sends money directly to the address that was scanned, and off you go. So this is, yeah, and again, all that happens kind of in tandem, and it sounds like, oh, lots of stuff happening at one time, but it's all done super efficiently.
And then you guys, like any other ATM machine, you're taking a transaction fee or a percentage or something like that
That's
in
right.
exchange. Yeah.
That's exactly right. So actually, like the fact that they're called Bitcoin ATMs is a little bit misleading in my opinion. They're better known as Bitcoin vending machines. We have kiosks that we place in strategic locations. We accept cash and we vend our product. Our product just happens to be digital, so restocking it becomes very, very easy. And also making sure that it's safe becomes very, very easy. If this were a gold vending machine, you'd have to have bricks of gold sitting in the machine. You have the dial come down, clunk clunk down the machine it goes. That process is just digitized with Bitcoin.
Yeah. Okay. Really neat. And so you have these scattered across Western Canada or right across Canada, or whereabouts are they now?
Right across Canada. In
Okay.
2019, we made our first acquisition to enter the Eastern Canadian market. So there was a location or a network of 10 machines. At the time, it was doing $10,000 per month per machine. So like a good, healthy network. And this was kind of our first foray, our first test into like, how good are our processes? How good is our operations, our marketing, our advertising, our brand? So we acquired that network and then kind of, spent a lot of time in documentation, how to implement that those machines into our network, our processes. And 8 months later, 9 months later, we had that same network doing $40,000 per month per machine. We're able to like quadruple the revenue per machine, which is a testament, I think, to just, at the end of the day, we're 7 years old in a 7-year-old industry, and it gave us the opportunity to kind of put that expertise to the test. And I was super stoked on the team's ability to like just super crush that.
Yeah, that's really good. And so, I mean, one of the things that we like to do in this show is to have people, share their lessons learned or the mistakes that they've made along the way. And so, in this example or this particular part of your business, where you, instead of growing just organically and trying to strategically put some units into Eastern Canada, you decided to go with the acquisition route. Walk me through that, the lessons maybe that you learned there, any advice that you might have to somebody else who's in the same kind of situation where they're trying to decide, do we grow organically or do we swallow, a bigger acquisition?
Yeah, no, great question. The acquisition was super interesting, and obviously we learned a ton. I think that to be clear, I don't really look at mistakes necessarily as I wouldn't want to do them again. We actually, a guy on our team, we set one of his goals to fail this year, because I want our team just like swinging the bat so big and looking for home runs, and we have the luxury now as an organization to be able to swallow up some of that failure. But I want our team, innovating and taking that risk on that. So I wouldn't necessarily say that I would change anything, but certainly, when going through an acquisition, I felt very, very underprepared for my requirement in like the legal process. I kind of, being my first one and being a young early business owner at the time, I felt very intimidated by the lawyers asking me certain questions and kind of looking for certain things. And I felt like, I was like, isn't this your job? Like, shouldn't you be warning me about certain things? Why are you asking me these questions? And so I felt like throughout the process, and eventually I kind of got more comfortable with asking why that was being asked and what the intent behind that was, and pushing back on the lawyers. I kind of had this impression of like little old me, the business owner, against these like big suits, and kind of what my role was there, and my perception kind of shifted as I kind of went through the process, I guess. And then the implementation on that, lucky for me, so the actual structure of the purchase was such that we had some securities on the back end, so I wasn't too concerned about outlaying a bunch of cash and not getting what I was necessarily promised. But the implementation of the machines, like I made sure that I was over there, and I made sure that I was doing what needed to be done for the business and understanding the full amount of how they did things differently to us, because it was the same exact business. We kind of, they didn't have a process book per se, and not that we had like this like, beautiful holy grail Bible of processes, but we did things a certain way. And so it was just asking so many questions and figuring out exactly what was happening on a day-to-day in the business to be able to then integrate that and change that into what we were doing. I would say were the two biggest keys to that acquisition for sure. And then I guess thirdly, like just having fun with it. Like it was a blast negotiating. It was stressful, as you know what, for sure. But negotiating with the vendor and going through the whole process of the MOU to the the purchase agreement and then closing and it was it was a ton of fun.
So I'm just curious, on that acquisition, was it just the machines that you were acquiring, or were you also acquiring some staff as well in the transaction?
No, we did no staff. It was an asset purchase. So we just took the machines over, and then we operated. So this was our foray into operating things. Like everything in Western Canada is like an hour flight away. There's nothing you can't get to within an hour.
Yeah.
And so if something catastrophic happened in Vancouver and Calgary, we were like, we could be there right away. And this changed for when we ventured into the Toronto and into the GTA. So that was, I think, the biggest kind of requirement for us was we had to make sure that we had good partners down there. We relied on the partnerships that were created by the vendor, but ultimately, I think that the most important thing that we did was keep everything internally. We weren't trying to onboard people, coupling with onboarding kind of a new network.
Yeah. Now, so what would you say were the major reason for the success of taking it from 10,000 to 40,000, that quadrupling, besides the manual, the processes that you had in place, or is that was the thing that did it, as you guys were just able to really implement on some proven processes you had already worked out west?
Yeah, I think that was a big part of it. I think that our brand played a big part of it. I don't think that our brand necessarily, back then I didn't give it the credit that I now know that it deserved.
Yeah.
We were, I think we deployed like the third Bitcoin ATM in Canada. We were the first in Alberta, the first in Saskatchewan. Again, little old me, the business owner, didn't really think that our branding kind of had stretched as far as it had. And so that was certainly underrated in my mind. And this acquisition proved to show that. But I think too, it all comes down to the operational knowledge. We knew what we were doing. We were very confident in what we were doing. And that's what made the acquisition so accretive, I think.
Okay. So now with the way that the price of Bitcoin has just accelerated so much over the last couple of years, is that something that then drives more demand within those machines, or how related, I guess, is the price of Bitcoin, besides, I guess, the overall exposure that Bitcoin gets in the news, which would probably increase the interest that people have. But I'm just curious how correlated the two are.
No, I think you hit it on the head there. I think that anytime something increases in value the way Bitcoin has, and then continually increases in value the way Bitcoin has, Bitcoin's been the best performing asset on planet Earth like 8 out of the last 10 years, something like that. So it's definitely got a lot of market attention and steam. This year in particular, we've seen the likes of like Elon Musk and Michael Saylor and these giant CEOs making the decision to evacuate cash in favor of Bitcoin. And that certainly has people raising their eyebrows. I think that the machines, we serve a certain clientele at the machine. They're utilitarian. They need Bitcoin, for money remittance, or there's lots of websites that offer discounts if you're paying in Bitcoin. Lots of just different kind of utility uses for Bitcoin. And we have a percentage of our population, of our customer set, that is the speculative investor. And so I think that because we have a well-rounded customer, the media hype and the media attention is good. I think that as a company, though, I recognized early on that being a one-trick pony wasn't necessarily the way that we wanted to do things. And so we made the decision to, early on to invest in technology and to make sure that we were more than just an ATM company. We have a bills payments platform online that allows us to, allows the customer to pay their bills in Bitcoin. You have the ability to sell your Bitcoin for an Interac e-transfer on the website, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that that's kind of been a benefit. It slowed down our expansion of ATMs, but it allowed to kind of capture more customers. Now that we have that kind of base layer of core customer capture, we're going to be able to scale and thrive.
Yeah, because it does on the surface, it seems a little almost archaic in a way that I'd have to walk down to an ATM machine to
Right.
purchase my Bitcoin when, I can do online banking or banking mobile from my phone with traditional institutions. Is there a reason why I can't buy Bitcoin that way? Like just transfer from my bank to you and not have to walk down to the ATM?
Yeah, legacy finance does a really awful job at fraud. There's just no way around that. When you make an online transaction, you have 90 days to put up a stink with your bank, which means if your bank account, if someone guesses your mother's maiden name, which is like posted on Facebook, and gets into your bank, they have the ability to use your bank account free will, and then you have 90 days to recall that transaction due to fraud. And so when you have a product that you can vend with a very, very low margin, that reaches finality in 10 minutes or less, that's a big problem, because on hour one, let alone day 52, if that transaction gets recalled, our small margin doesn't necessarily, like we don't have coffee margins at 800%. We can't just stomach the loss of, one out of every 100 transactions. And so we had to make sure that the money we were taking in was in fact the money that it said it was.
That makes sense. And I didn't realize that. That makes complete sense. So
Yeah,
going forward,
finality is like something that very few people, I think, know and understand. If you go to the bar and use your credit card, and like especially before there was chips, back when it was just signing, it's horrific. The chargebacks associated with restaurants, coffee shops, and just it's staggering. We start looking into what a chargeback is, and how the operator of the business suffers as a result of that.
and the chargeback being people then disputing those charges
Exactly.
within that 90 days that you're talking about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. And so is that something that in the future, not too far off, it will be possible to make these transactions online, where you guys will have the technology in place where the risk of fraud is extremely low, or is it just, this is kind of the way it's looking like it's going to be for the next while?
Well, that's a great question, and half of it is logistics and half of it is philosophical. So I've been living in like philosophical land for the last 6 months as I can kind of innovate. So I'll push that aside for a minute while we answer the logistics. So we will, and we do have the technology needed to have a rigorous anti-fraud, a rigorous compliance program, and the regulations that come into play in June 2021, they give us a massive advantage, because now everyone will be required to gather this information. Before, if there was a ton of work to open an account and no work to open an account, general society is going to do no work, the path of least resistance. The thought of buying Bitcoin and having to enter your ID, your address, and your phone number, that thought was not necessarily welcomed, I don't think, for the majority of people looking to purchase Bitcoin. And now that it's a requirement, it levels the playing field, and everyone will be required to give that information in order to purchase Bitcoin.
So what I'm hearing is you guys were requiring that before it was regulation. Now everybody else is going to be kind of at the same level then.
To an extent, yes. Like, in order to purchase online, those are the hard requirements.
Gotcha.
And so that's going to push a large part of our customer base, the customers that we want to reach, to our platform, which is I'm very excited about. And I think that philosophically, as a society, we have done a really bad job at teaching our kids and our peers how to handle money. Your note about people losing a thumb drive with a password, that is like that's a reality. That's a terrifying reality. But like at the same time, we all drive cars that are worth like 50, 60 grand, and the key is like $3,000 to replace, and no one's worried about missing their keys, right? We all have a phone that costs $1,000, and like no one, like I don't see anyone knocking cell phones because they cost too much for sure, but like no one's like super terrified about carrying around a cell phone. What if I lose it? Your watch, your headphones, like even just little spending money that you have in your pocket. We're all super comfortable carrying that, but when it comes to money, we're like, no, money. We got to get rid of it. We got to give it to the bank. We got to give it to our guy. I got to release my custody of my money in order to keep it safe. And that's just wrong. The safest place for your money is in your possession. Safest place for your money is learning how it works, learning how you interact with it. And so I think that, philosophically and societally, I would call on the educators, I would call on the government to be teaching its society how to properly interact with money and how to actually become financially sovereign. Your money is not safer in RBC than it is in Bitcoin. That's just wrong. I did a transaction. I've been like interested in like trading cards, Pokemon and hockey cards. And so yesterday I met up with someone and purchased some Pokemon cards, and I paid him in Bitcoin. And that was great. But the transaction was impossible outside of Bitcoin because the banks were not open in order to issue me a bank draft. So how else was I meant to pay him? And when you think about that, wait a minute, 1 out of 7 days a week, my entire money is inaccessible. That should petrify you. Like that should just mortally, that should paralyze you in fear, in my opinion. And so Bitcoin kind of has this alternative perception of, you have full and total control, but that comes at a cost. And the cost is you have to be more responsible. You have to be more aware of what the world is, of what your surroundings are. And so I think that in the same way, we are all kind of starting to figure out what our information is like online. You go to a trade show and giving them your email and your phone number and your address and your name and your dog's name and all that stuff isn't the safest thing to be doing to like the 9 insurance brokers that are there looking to give you a free bottle of wine in exchange for all that information. I think we have to have that same look at our money and our money practices and kind of how that looks.
Yeah. Really good points. It's interesting because it is true. I mean, we look at things with just a different lens on it when it's new, like we said at the top of the show, to shifting the perspective that we maybe have and putting it into real terms as to comparing it to the lost keys of your vehicle. Yeah, that's a good point.
It's interesting. It definitely, like, I mean, even you think at like your wedding ring, or like, we carry around thousands of dollars on us on a daily basis, and no one blinks an eye.
Okay, so what's on the horizon now then for Bitcoin Well? Then what's is there another acquisition that you maybe are going to do? Are you going to enter into the U.S. market? Is it organic growth? What's the future hold for you guys?
So the last 18 months, we've been working and focused on going public. We are poised to become the world's first publicly traded Bitcoin ATM company, which is, as you can hear, I've said that 1 million times in the last 18 months. So that's been very exciting. We just closed the required concurrent funding round last week. So things are moving along, and we are hoping to list very, very soon, pending whatever kind of extra hoops or hurdles we have to jump through in order to appease the the exchange, and making sure that things are done properly and done in a way that is safe for everyone.
Yep.
So that's been a big part of my attention and my focus. Outside of that, we do have a couple of acquisitions in the works, some local here in Canada. We are exploring what a global acquisition would look like, and how we can continue to expand our horizons. And then I think too, our input into technology is super, super important for me. And so making sure that we have the best software, the safest software, the fastest software, and the ability to double down on that and to give the customers the best experience. I believe that we can have the same convenience as we have in an online bank, because you hit it right, you hit the nail on the head. It is so convenient. Online banking is so good. We can send limited, but like a good amount for day-to-day amount of money back and forth, you and I, through like an Interac e-transfer. I can look at my balance at a glance. I can pay my bills. I can, I can request money. I can send money. Online banking is fantastic. The downside of that is that you have no control over your money whatsoever. And so I believe in a world that we have that same convenience, but we also have the control that Bitcoin offers. So right now, building up platforms that allow you to do that. Right now on our website, you have the ability to pay your bills. That's great, right? You go on there, you enter your Visa number or your Hydro account number, you send the Bitcoin bill, or the Bitcoin gets sold, the bill gets paid, all of it happens automatically. Very, very good. The next step to that is noticing, hey, I've noticed you've paid a Hydro bill of $382 every single month for the last 6 months. Do you want to just set this up automatically and just have this, set it and forget it? Better yet, do you want, and then the opportunities from there, and I won't go into too much specifics because it's pretty intentional, but do you want to manage your Bitcoin in a different way that allow you to hold on to more Bitcoin than you would by selling through a lending product? And then and so there's just all kinds of different ways that we can give that convenience, but still keep the customer financially sovereign, still keep the control ultimately lying with the custody of the coins, which should always sit with the end user.
Man, it sounds like a busy few months in ahead for you. All of the innovation on top of trying to go public and that. So, I mean, those are huge, huge things that you're focused on. So, kudos to you for taking that on, and the best of luck with going public. Right now, I can't imagine there being a better time. It seems like everybody who's going public right now is getting just huge valuations and huge bumps anyway in the initial IPOs, right? So, and I would think there'd be a lot of interest in Bitcoin, well, just because of the interest in Bitcoin in general. So you guys should be positioned well for that. So
Thank
everybody
you. I
who's
certainly
listening
hope
to
so.
this, pay attention, get in when this hits, because I would imagine there's going to be some money to be made right at the offset. So now, is there going to be a requirement in this public offering that anybody buying stock is going to have to buy it in Bitcoin, or?
I wish, man. I wish that'd be great because we boost sales and have a successful public offering. So, no, I think that it'll be done through traditional what I've been calling legacy finance methods for right now. But I think that part of that innovation and part of it is partnering up with the platforms that allow you to buy and sell securities and having ways to fund your securities accounts with Bitcoin. At the end of the day, we are just movers of money. We take Canadian dollars and we send Bitcoin, and with the proper compliance, with the proper anti-fraud software installed, we can manipulate that however we need to. And so right now, like I said, I've been living in philosophy land. I can just dream up the craziest thing, and chances are, if it involves money, we can make it happen. So I'm super bullish on the future of Bitcoin, of course, and of the organization to be able to do such. I'm pretty excited.
Okay, so now I want you to take a moment and think back to that 2013 Adam who is starting a business after 10 advisors have told him, no, this is a ridiculous idea, Adam, don't do it. So what would you tell Adam now, your future self talking to your past self, or your present self talking to your past self? What would be some of the advice that you would give Adam?
I think that this is a great question. It's one that I've been reflecting on a lot. I'm super lucky to be in the position that I'm in as an entrepreneur, and so I've had young entrepreneurs reach out to me and ask for feedback, and I love doing that. I think that's just fantastic. And one thing that I think, in reflection, it was just having the passion to do it and not being afraid to just fall flat on my face. Was so important. I think about the steps that I made early on, and lots of them were the right steps. Lots of them were the right steps a little bit later than they should have been. And on the flip side, we've seen a lot of success in doing things too early, or based on what corporate America or business advisors might tell you. When I had 3 people, we had a staff of 3. I leased 4,200 square feet. And everyone was like, that's too much. Like, that's way too much money to spend. This is ridiculous. Yeah. Today, 3 months ago, we had to blow the wall out in between this 4,200 square feet and the 2,000 square feet beside us. And now that 6,200 square feet is full. And we're 2.5 years into our lease. So I've never been afraid of I was afraid, I think. And then as my confidence and as things kind of grew, I became less afraid of what people told me, and took everything with a grain of salt. And I think that that's kind of the most important thing to do, is to have the confidence in yourself to take what everyone else says with a grain of salt. And you're going to look stupid sometimes. But I was called a lot of names for the first 5 years of my career, and I'm getting called the opposite of those names now. You get called from being called crazy to a visionary, or you get called from being called, reckless to strategic. And it's funny how the same word can mean totally different, or how same concept can mean totally different things. Yeah. But I would just encourage anyone listening, starting, who has an idea, just go for it, just do it. And really, as long as you think it's justified by your thought process and the way that you think it can be done, chances are it's a good idea.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate the time, Adam, that you've taken with us today here to tell us a little bit about the history of Bitcoin, well, where you're at, some of the advice along the way, some of the challenges that you've had, and just the excitement. That's really cool. So now, in terms of people, if they wanted to reach out to you in some form or another, what's the best way for people to connect with you? Whether that's to buy some Bitcoin, to ask you when the IPO is going to hit, and maybe get some entrepreneurial advice as well.
Yeah, definitely. So our website, bitcoinwell.com, is the best place to learn about Bitcoin and contact the team. I am super lucky that have I have a team of people that are better at explaining Bitcoin than I am, and so I've gotten very good at explaining the high level Bitcoin at these podcasts, and I've been doing a ton of that. But we have people who specialize in knowing the nitty gritty ins and outs, the everyday questions about using a Bitcoin wallet and going through that and to do that. So I think that's the best way to learn about Bitcoin. In terms of myself, I think Twitter is probably the best way. At Adam O'Brien _ is where I am on Twitter, and I kind of just spam my followers with what I find interesting, and usually where the company's at and what's on my mind. So I would say those two spots are the best place to go, or emailing help@bitcoinwell.com gets you linked into the team, and that team, I have yet to see an answer that couldn't be I have yet to see a question that couldn't be answered. So we have been, I think I mentioned earlier to you, we're kind of starting up this some content creation of our own, and so using the hashtag #AskAdamO'Brien on Twitter. We've been collecting some data, and we've been doing monthly Q&As. We did our last one with a guy called Ben from BTC Sessions. He's a Calgary Bitcoin entrepreneur who's been making content for 5 or 6 years around Bitcoin. And I loved it. Some of the questions that came in were just remarkable. So using that hashtag #AskAdamO'Brien on Twitter is a great way to just, what's Bitcoin? Why should I care? Those types of questions, or down into the, what's the regulatory status about Bitcoin? And we kind of tackle it all on the show. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, sounds great. And so is it okay to spill the beans on what you got going on that you're building out there in your
Yeah, we've got this we've been building out this podcast studio. I'll see if I can get the camera around. So we've got kind of the early makings of what our set will look like. And I think that what I've noticed is we get like 95% of our questions or of our demands come kind of from multiple people. And so we figured that kind of getting ahead of the curve and having a way to give me a voice while giving the general population kind of something that they find interesting is big on our roadmap and for our brand and you around marketing for sure.
Yeah.
So that's been a big focus of ours this year, is figuring out ways strategic and interesting ways to give consumers value, and that comes in the form of answering questions and free content that everyone should have access to. We're developing an entire Bitcoin Academy at Bitcoin Well for free. It's all going to be free. Just ways to get people integrated into the industry and learning how the industry works, to get them comfortable with the industry and giving them so much value that leaving them virtually no choice than to shop with us after they're comfortable with our product.
Yeah, give away the best content, and you're going to really cultivate a great community around you, right? A great following.
Absolutely.
No matter what, that's going to help the business. And I mean, that's one of the reasons why we're doing what we do here with Amplify Your Business, is it's just about giving back and providing people with that advice. And you do good things in the industry and the markets that you're in, and you're going to get rewarded for it in some form or another. It just circles back. So yeah. So last question. Okay, this is probably the hardest one, and then we're going to go from here. So what is the future price? Any predictions here on Bitcoin? So say 6 months from now, what's it going to be worth?
Great question. So I will give you a little bit of a backstory, because I like to talk, and this seems like the place to do it. In 2017, I was asked this question like February, and I was mortally wrong. I said I figured Bitcoin would be $10,000 by the end of the year. And people called it, was Bitcoin at the time was just under 1,000 or right around that $1,000 mark. And people said, like, you are absolutely insane. That is just the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. And I was off by about $12,000. Bitcoin closed the year at 22,000 Canadian dollars, something like that. And
You weren't
and
crazy
then,
enough. You weren't.
well, that's exactly it. And then I was told, and then someone texted me in like 2019 and was like, hey, you're my conservative crystal ball for the price of Bitcoin. What do you think the price is going to be? And I was like, man, I told you it would 10x in 12 months, and that's conservative. Like, what? how are we doing that? Where's your head at? And then I had another. We've been having these price talks come up all the time, and so another colleague of mine texted me. I kind of did the whole price thing. We kind of dove into like a price exercise where I showed him what and then why I thought that, and I was like, I was pretty good. And he called me an oracle, which I'd never been called before. So that was pretty cool. So not to say that I'm going to be right. And this is not financial advice. My financial advice is that it's very risky not to own any Bitcoin. Yeah. Buying Bitcoin, expecting it to rise in value immediately is stupid. Don't do that. Buy Bitcoin for the long term. However, I am very, very confident that we will see a mid-range six-figure Bitcoin before the closing of 2021. Unfortunately, that looks like I'm copping out because Bitcoin's worth $70,000 and like the rise to 100 grand is like whatever. I've been saying that since 2000 and early 2020. I've been saying six-figure Bitcoin by the end of 2021. So it's not a cop out. This is what I believed the whole time. And the reason I think that is because of the mining cycle. And we're gonna do a video on the mining cycle. It's way too much for the closing question. I won't do that to your listeners. But I think the price of Bitcoin, while volatile, is actually pretty easy to predict. If you look at the graphs in 4-year chunks, we have pretty similar data, and it's kind of interesting to see. So I think that we'll probably see some $300,000 to $400,000 Bitcoin by the end of this year.
300,000 to 400,000. So
that's right.
Not just breaking 100. We're going, okay. When you
yeah. I think that ultimately, so then what will happen is the price will skyrocket, and then we'll see the 19th death of Bitcoin, and that will ultimately crash down to around the $100,000 mark, in my opinion. So,
okay.
We can clip this and set some kind of robot to tweet this out in a year and see how wrong or how conservative or how ludicrous this was. But I think that we'll see a rise to 300 or 400 grand, and then we will see the death of Bitcoin down to $100,000, which is just hilarious because just mentioning a crash to 100 grand seems stupid. But at one point, when Bitcoin crashed to $3,000, it's just funny how that works.
Yeah. No, that's a great prediction. So I am curious. We will hold you to it, whether it's in a tweet or a follow-up session. It'll be,
hey man, I think what I just did is I forced you to bring me on in 12 months. So
yeah. Okay, so thank you again, Adam. I really appreciate it. Love the fact that we got to speak to the Oracle of Bitcoin. That's
oh no,
forever known as now. So again, everybody, this is Adam O'Brien from Bitcoin Well. Thank you so much for coming in and sharing your thoughts, your journey with us. And for those of you who enjoyed this episode, if you're interested in checking out other episodes, you can head over to amplimedia.com/amplify, and you will see all of our archives there. And if you or somebody who might be a great candidate to be on the show, reach out, because we'd love to sit down and have a chat with more entrepreneurs who have exciting stories to share, just like Adam's. Now, I'm going to sign off and go see if I can find that missing thumb drive with all my Bitcoin. Okay.
Good luck.
Thanks a lot. Stay safe, everybody.
Thanks so much, man. Take care.